My sister faked cancer to sabotage my Ivy League dreams. So I exposed her lies and watched her life collapse. 2 years later, she's at my door, crying, asking if we can ever be sisters again. My sister was ready to destroy anything and everything to one-up me, including herself. Growing up, I always tried to be best friends with my older sister, Sasha. I bought all my clothes based on what her wardrobe looked like. And whenever she started a hobby, I would start it too. But instead of wanting to be my best friend, she started seeing me as her #1 opponent. Whenever she'd come home after winning an award, in running, dance, or any other hobby of hers, I copied. I was the first one she told. "Bet you couldn't do this, could you?" she'd say, then wave the award in my face. But instead of crying or getting jealous, I'd hug her super tight and tell her how happy I was for her. This just made her even angrier, and she'd shove me away, sometimes so hard that my entire body would fall onto the floor. I was the little sister who admired her. She was the older sister who resented me for existing. At school, people loved to compare us. Sasha was more outgoing, the type to join 5 clubs and lead 3 of them. I was quieter, bookish. I wrote poetry and ran the school's literary magazine. But academically, I outshone her. And that's when things started to turn ugly. It started with tiny jabs. At dinner, if I mentioned a quiz I aced, she'd yawn and say, "Wow, the world's most boring genius speaks again." If I won a science fair, she'd accidentally bump into me and knock the trophy off the table. When I got into AP classes before she did, she claimed I cheated because I was the teacher's pet. Still, I tried. I helped her with essays, gave her my old notes, even skipped sleep once to help her prep for a calculus test she barely studied for. She passed. I failed my own test the next morning. But it wasn't until senior year that the rivalry became full-blown war. Because that was the year I got my early acceptance letter from Harvard. The day the Harvard acceptance letter came, I didn't scream or cry. I just stared at the email, shaking slightly, the edges of my vision blurring. I had worked for this moment since I was 13. Summer research, tutoring programs, leadership initiatives. While other kids were out partying, I was reading grant proposals and writing essays. When I told my parents, they were stunned, speechless. My mom teared up. My dad grinned like he'd won the lottery. Even my grandma called from overseas to say how proud she was. For once, all the attention was on me. Sasha stood in the corner, arms folded, silent. "Isn't it amazing?" my dad said, slapping her on the back. "Your little sister, Harvard." Sasha didn't say a word. She just walked off. And that night, for the first time in weeks, I heard her crying in her room. I wish I could say that softened me, that I went to her and offered to help her find her own path. But I didn't. For once, I felt seen. I felt enough. And I wasn't ready to give that up. The next week, Sasha posted on Instagram a black square with just one line of text. "Nothing will ever be the same again." And then came the news. Sasha had cancer. She told my parents privately at first. I overheard it by accident, their sobs leaking from the bedroom like spilled gasoline. I stood frozen outside the door, trying to process it. Sasha? Cancer? She was only 19. She made them promise not to tell me right away. But that night, she walked into my room with red eyes and trembling hands. "I have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma," she said. I couldn't speak. I just got up and hugged her. She didn't shove me away this time. She leaned into the hug like she needed it to breathe. Over the next few days, everything changed. The house grew quiet. My parents barely talked unless it was about appointments or tests. Sasha stopped going to work. She stopped eating with us. Packages started arriving, medical wigs, books on healing, organic teas. She never let me go to the hospital with her. "She doesn't want you to see her like that," Mom said. "It's too hard for her." I understood. I didn't push. I withdrew my application for the early move-in program at Harvard, canceled a summer research trip. When Sasha lost her appetite, I spent nights cooking homemade meals she didn't eat. When she missed her old friends, I invited them over and stayed out of sight so they could reconnect. I gave her everything I had, but something didn't sit right. I started noticing inconsistencies. One day, she claimed she had a chemo session, but when I passed by her room hours later, she was fully dressed, hairstyled, and scrolling through TikTok. Another time, I found a receipt from Sephora. Lip gloss and a contour palette, dated the same day she said she was in the hospital getting an infusion. And her hair. It never fell out. She told our parents she was wearing a wig, that she'd shaved it herself preemptively. But I accidentally brushed past her once, and the strands didn't shift. They tugged at her scalp like the roots were very real. Still, I told myself to stop thinking such horrible things. Who doubts their own sister about something like cancer? But the doubts didn't stop. They grew. Then one day, she forgot to lock her bedroom door. I stepped in, and what I found changed everything. There were no pill bottles, no medical forms, no real hospital paperwork. Instead, there were costume adhesive labels, some printed prescription papers that looked homemade, and several appointment cards, all with the same repeated phone number. I Googled it. It was a pizza place downtown. Then I found a folder on her desk labeled Scholarship Essays, Ivy League. Inside it were printed essays, mine. Essays I had written, essays I had submitted. My sister had copied them. That night, I waited until everyone was asleep. Then I slipped into her room again and opened her laptop. It didn't even have a password. Her email was still signed in, and right there in her drafts was an application to Columbia University. With my volunteer hours, my leadership experience, and my essay about working with disadvantaged kids in the STEM program. Word for word, she had planned to steal my identity, my story, and ride the cancer lie into an Ivy League slot, and she was almost getting away with it. I sat in the dark of my room, shaking, not with fear, not even with sadness, with rage. I had given up Harvard's summer program, given up my friends, given up my peace. I had spoon-fed my sister sympathy, while she spoon-fed herself lies, and I knew what I had to do. I didn't go nuclear right away. No, I planned. Because if Sasha wanted war, I'd give her one she'd never recover from. First, I gathered evidence. I printed out the fake appointment cards with the pizza shop number, screenshotted her laptop with my essays, photographed the medical wig untouched in her closet. I even recorded a video of her dancing alone in her room on a day she claimed to have been vomiting from chemo. Then, I called my Uncle Dan, a doctor who lived 3 states over and had always been skeptical about Sasha's illness. I asked him to review the test results she'd shown our parents. He did, and within minutes, he called back. "These aren't real," he said. "This document is riddled with spelling errors. Radiation instead of radiation? Come on." That was the final straw. The next morning, I sat down with my parents. My mom was half asleep, and Dad was reading the newspaper. I dropped the folder of evidence on the kitchen table. "Before I say anything," I said, "you need to know I love you both." And I wanted to protect her. But she crossed a line. They flipped through the pages slowly. At first denial, then confusion, then devastation. "I don't believe this," Mom whispered. "No, she wouldn't." Dad was silent, lips pressed into a pale, hard line. He finally looked up at me and asked, "Are you absolutely sure?" "I wish I wasn't," I said. We confronted Sasha that night. She denied everything, of course. Screamed, cried, called me a liar, an attention seeker, a jealous little brat. But when Dad brought up the pizza shop number and Mom asked to see her hospital bills, she froze. Then the truth came out in waves. Ugly, bitter waves. She had seen my Harvard acceptance and panicked. Said she felt invisible. Said she knew she wasn't smart enough to get in anywhere prestigious, but couldn't stand the idea of me, her little shadow, shining brighter. So she faked cancer, claimed she was too sick for college, then secretly applied under my credentials. "I didn't think you'd catch me," she whispered. "You didn't think I'd fight back," I said. That night, my parents made a decision I didn't expect. They kicked her out. It wasn't forever, they said, but she needed help, therapy, consequences, and space. As she packed, she glared at me like I'd ruined her life. But she did that all on her own. I deferred my freshman year to mentally recover from the mess. I eventually made it to Harvard a year later, alone, determined, tired but proud. In some ways, it wasn't the dream I thought it would be, not after everything, but it was mine, earned. I haven't spoken to Sasha in 2 years. She lived with a cousin for a while, tried getting jobs, but couldn't hold any. Word got around about what she'd done. People whispered. Some unfollowed her, some confronted her. She spiraled. We heard she checked into a psychiatric facility last fall. And then this morning, a knock at my door. I opened it, and there she was. Sasha, pale, thin, different, tears in her eyes, arms crossed like a shield. "Can we talk?" she said. I wanted to ask if you ever think we can be sisters again." I didn't know what to say. Part of me still ached. Part of me still loved her. But trust once shattered doesn't come back whole. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe, but you'll need to become someone I can believe in again." She nodded, said nothing, turned, and walked away. I shut the door behind her, heart thudding, a strange weight in my chest. My sister once faked dying to kill my dreams, but I survived. And now I'm learning to live.